Hello everybody, I'm going to teach you how to play a game called Racetrack, and I set up an example on this board right here of a course. Racetrack is basically just like a NASCAR race, but instead of cars, you're in real life you're going to it's a board game. You're going to do it on a sheet of paper on one of these kind of tracks. Okay, I have a number of tracks that I've printed out for you. Here is track 1, right? Looks like that, pretty simple. Track 2, a little more complex, right? Track 3, a little bit of a bottleneck right there in it, right? So there are stacks of these tracks I've printed out, and for any race you do, you get to choose your own track, whichever track you like to do. You have a sheet which has the directions that I'm going to give you right now, but you have a sheet which says them on them right here. Okay, see objective, directions, velocity, acceleration, and as you can see right here, it starts trials. There's trial 1, trial 2. Okay, and if you go flip over the first page, there's trial 3, trial 4, trial 5, and it goes all the way up to trial 7. Alright, so you're going to do 7 races. Each trial is another race, and you'll have to choose another track for that race. Alright, you're always going to be racing against a partner, so you get to choose your partner. Okay, I suggest just pick a partner, maybe stick with that person for all 7 trials, and there will be a winner to each race. So when you hand in, say for trial 1, you could choose track 1. You could race against each other. Indicate you're going to race with colored pencils on this track. Okay, I'm going to use markers. And with the colored pencils, just say who was which color. So write your names in that color. And say who won the race. Okay. So for each, when you hand this in, what you're going to hand in is a completed sheet, all right, with the tables filled out. All right, I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to fill out each table before each race, and you're also going to hand in the tracks with you and your partner's name on it, all right? I need one of these sheets per person, and obviously I need one track per race per pair of persons. Okay, I don't need you each to have your own track to hand in for a race. Okay, but your name will be on 7 tracks, and you will have your own filled out piece of paper because there's 7 trials. All right. Okay, let's get ready to teach you how to play the game. Okay. So there's 2 terms that really go into the game that you just need to know the difference from. And this is basically our objective, is to know when we're done with this game, we're going to know the difference between what velocity means and what acceleration means. Okay? So velocity. Let's start with velocity. There's our definition for velocity in this game. Okay? It's the amount of spaces you move each turn. Okay, so in Racetrack, we have spaces, indicated between these blue lines, and you will have a grid of paper, which will demarcate the spaces for you. And whatever your velocity is, that's V, that's how many spaces you move each turn. Got it? All right. So if your velocity is, and in our first trial, our velocity is going to be 2. All right, so let's do that. 2. All right. Oh, it's pretty ugly. Velocity 2. All right. So that's how many spaces you get to move each turn. You get to move 2 spaces, and then your partner will take his turn and move 2 spaces. But the second term you need to know is acceleration. To read that definition to yourself. It's the amount of spaces you add to or subtract from your move each turn. So you might have a velocity of 2, right? As you can see right here. But an acceleration can change that velocity for your next turn. Now, we're not going to start off having an acceleration in our first example, in our first trial. We're going to make it an acceleration of 0. And 2 is also a very slow speed for this game. So, this trial is going to be called a slow, constant velocity, right? Why are we going to call it a constant velocity? Because there's no acceleration, your velocity is never going to change, okay? So when you see a 0 here for acceleration, all right, and whatever your acceleration is, just drop it down the whole column. Your acceleration will never change during a race. It'll always be the same. So no acceleration means whatever you start out with for velocity stays the same the whole time to the whole way. All right, now before you do a race on your own paper, see this table I'm making is the same as the table you have on your own paper, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? Before you start the race, you have to fill in the table first, okay? All right, so this row is like your first turn for you and your partner, your second turn, the third row is the third turn, all right, and each turn you get to move 2 spaces because that's what your velocity is. Now let's do it, all right? I'm going to race against myself. We're going to have the red team, right, versus the green team, and you could pick your own colored pencil, all right? Now you get to start wherever you want to behind the starting line, which is right here, okay? There's 4 different spaces. You get to choose your own space. You and the person you're racing against cannot start in the same space. You must start in different spaces. All right. So let's have red go first, and red is trying to get to the finish line. So let's go forward 1, 2, and that's where red finishes. So draw a dot there wherever you finish, right? And now it'll be green's turn, and green will also go 2, 1, 2. Okay, now the thing is, now it's red's turn. Red's going to have to get around this curve. So what are we going to do? Maybe we'll go 1 and up. Are we allowed to go there? That box is a little cut off. Well, as long as there's some space in that box, you're allowed to go there, right? Now, remember, no acceleration, so our velocity is always going to be 2 in this case. Now, green is also going to have to go, again, 2 spaces, but green has a further way to go. Maybe green shouldn't have chose this outside part of the track to start on, right? And it'll go on and on until you finish. You know, first person gets to the finish line. Write that person's name on that track so you could hand in that track. Now, what if this, it's red's turn. What if you do this? And say green, somewhere along the way, green is going 1, 2, right? And then red goes 1, 2, right? And green goes 1. Is green allowed to go right there where red was before? Well, that's okay, because red's not there anymore, right? So green can actually go here, even though red crossed that space before, okay? Green cannot go into a space that is currently occupied by red, and red can't hit into green likewise. But if red just used to be there, then that's fine. You can cross the paths of where each other were, but not where each other currently are. Red is currently right here, so green can't go in that spot, but he could go anywhere along the path where red was, okay? So that's important to know for the game. It's just like a real race, all right? So let's do, I could have started off this trial like this, another way. I could have made it a fast constant velocity. And maybe I would have started off and said, hey, your velocity you start with is 5, right? Right? Well, if there's no acceleration, it's still a fast constant velocity. No acceleration means your velocity will stay the same. So if I gave you a 5 in the beginning, you just have a 5 for velocity the entire way down, okay? All right, that would never change as long as your acceleration is 0. So let's do a trial where there is an acceleration. Let's do that. Let's get rid of that. Let's clear our table. And one of your later trials will have accelerations in them, so you need to know how to treat a trial with an acceleration, right? So remember, always fill in the table before you do the race. That's what we're going to do here. So when you get to any trial, whether it has an acceleration or 0 acceleration, fill in your table first and then do the race. So I'm going to also kind of get rid of this race here. We're going to restart the race. Okay. So let's get our blue lines back. Okay. I think we're ready to go. So say we start off with a velocity of 1. Right? Let's use blue over here. Start with a velocity of 1, right? But I'm going to give you an acceleration of positive 1. Now the question is, you know, an acceleration means you're either going to speed up or slow down. Is this a speed up or a slow down if it's an acceleration of positive 1, right? Let's make that a little neater. Positive 1, right? Is that a speed up or a slow down? Well, it's a positive acceleration, right? So that's what our trial is going to be. Positive acceleration, that means speed up, right? So what that means is the whole time you're going to have a positive acceleration of 1. Which means each turn you add 1 more space to your move, okay? So you may have had a velocity of 1, which means you move 1 space to start with, but the next turn you're going to move 2 spaces, and the next turn 3 spaces, right? And so on. Each turn you'll add 1 more space to your move until you finish. At the end you're going to be going very fast, okay? So, you know, if we go back to red and green, how do we do this trial? Red, green, right? So each guy will move 1 to start with, right here. So that was the first turn, right? But now red gets to go, and they get to go 2 now, right? And green also gets to go 2 spaces, right? And then the next turn, because our acceleration is positive 1, we add another space to our turn. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow, look at red go. And green also gets to go 1, 2, 3, right? Now you can't move diagonally one to each other. If you want to go at diagonal, you got to move over and then up, okay? And the next turn, they get to go 4, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So there you go. That race is going to get done fairly quickly because they're going to keep going faster. What if we had an acceleration of positive 2 instead? How would that look different, right? We start off with a speed of 1 and we have an acceleration of positive 2 the whole time. Certainly we're speeding up, but now we've hit the gas even harder, right? So if you have an acceleration of positive 2, that means you get to add 2 spaces to your next move. So if you start off with a speed of 1, then you get to go 3 spaces the next turn. and then you add 2 more for the third turn, right? 2 more spaces, so you get to go 5 spaces, right? And then 7 spaces, and keep adding 2 to every move. You know, if you had an acceleration of +3, you'd add 3 spaces to your next move. If you had an acceleration of +10, you'd add 10 spaces to your next move, and you'd speed up fairly quickly, right? So that's how the acceleration works. Now, that's positive acceleration. Let's look at negative acceleration. So this will be our last thing we'll talk about before you start racing. Okay? Now you may pretty much, you're like, I get it. Negative acceleration. You may know already what we're going to do here. All right? So this time I'm going to start off with a velocity of 10. Okay? But we're going to do a negative acceleration. That means instead of getting faster and adding more spaces to our move, what? That means we're going to move slower and take away spaces from each move, right? Now, don't go to a negative speed ever, okay? If you get down to a velocity of 1, just stop the acceleration there, okay? Stay at the velocity of 1, all right? You got to remind yourself of these rules, and you could always go back to this video and re-watch it, okay? Whenever you have a question, okay? So what if we had an acceleration of -1? What that would mean is the whole time we have that acceleration, all right? And it means we take away 1 space from our next move, all right? So if we move 10 spaces in the first turn, then we're going to move 9 spaces in the second turn, right? And then the next turn we will move 8 spaces, then 7, then 6, then 5, then 4. And remember, once you get down to 1 for velocity, stay at 1, okay? Now, it's pretty simple. It's just the opposite of positive acceleration. It's slowing down instead of speeding up, right? Less spaces each turn rather than more spaces. If you have an acceleration of -2, how would that look different, right? It means you would slow down faster, right? And you would lose your velocity of 10 even quicker. So you'd go down to 8, then lose 2 more, down to 6, 2 more, down to 4, 2 more, down to 2, and remember, just don't go to 0. If that's the case, then stay at 2 instead of 1, okay? So there you go, all right? If you have any questions, just go right back to the video. The first person across the finish line is the winner, so going first is an advantage, all right? Take turns going first, all right? I'm going to grade these after I get back. I'm going to give an extra point if you have a win in your races, okay? So you got to have your name, you got to have a partner's name, you got to have who is which color on the races, you got to have your table filled out on your paper, or you're not getting any of the extra points, all right? Unless you hand in exactly what I described to you in this video, all right? But as long as you hand all that stuff in, all right, I will give the winner of each of the races, you got to mark that on the races. I'm going to give you an extra point per win. You got 7 trials on your assignment. So, hey, maybe 7 extra points. Can you use that? Probably, all right? Good luck and enjoy.